You ever wonder why two people with pretty much the same income make wildly different choices with their money? Well, the answer isn't just about spreadsheets and logic. Turns out it's way more about our personal history. So let's dive in and explore how our past experiences literally create a unique financial fingerprint that guides every single dollar we spend. Okay, let's start with just a number. 35%. What on earth could this be? Well, it's a snapshot of a huge shift that's happening right now in one of the most common places we all spend our money.
That's right. Over a third of us have totally changed what we're putting in our shopping carts. We're swapping out the big-name brands for the store's own version. And you know, this isn't some random trend. It's a direct response to a force we've all been feeling lately: inflation.
And that right there brings us to our first big topic. We're seeing this massive change in how people shop, and it's all driven by the simple fact that groceries cost more. It's forcing all of us to get a little bit more creative.
So how exactly are we fighting back against these higher prices? Well, according to Clarkston Consulting, it's kind of like a three-pronged defense. The biggest group, 41% of us, are stocking up when things go on sale. Makes sense. Then you've got 37% who are either just buying less stuff or switching to cheaper items. And then there's that 35% we just talked about, making the switch to store brands. It's a really clear picture of how we're all adapting on the fly.
And you can bet the big grocery chains have noticed. I mean, check out this quote from the CEO of Ahold Delhaize. They own chains like Food Lion and Stop & Shop. He's saying their goal is to make store brands almost half their sales. So they're not just reacting to this, they are leaning hard into this shift. It's a long-term business strategy now.
And here's the crucial part, the real kicker. This isn't just a temporary fix. A staggering 90% of shoppers say they're going to stick with these new habits. A switch that started out of necessity is now becoming a permanent preference. And that suggests something much deeper is changing in our financial psychology.
You know, this whole shift towards new, lasting habits, it's especially clear when you look at one group in particular, Gen Z. They've basically grown up during a time of intense economic uncertainty, and it's shaping their entire financial playbook from the ground up.
You've probably seen this blowing up on social media. It's called loud budgeting. It's this trend of being super open and totally unapologetic about your financial goals and your limits. So instead of, I can't, I'm broke, it's, nope, can't do that, I'm saving for a down payment. It's this really cool cultural shift away from financial shame and towards financial pride.
And it's not just talk either. This new mindset is backed by some really concrete strategies. NASDAQ highlighted a super popular one, the 3-bucket system. First, you build a safety net, your emergency fund. Second, you invest for the long haul, like in a 401k. And third, you create a flexible account for specific goals, maybe travel or a new car. It's just organized, proactive, and really built for resilience.
Okay, so we're seeing people adapt their behavior. That makes sense. But this is where the story gets really fascinating. Let's look at a puzzle from the COVID-19 pandemic that honestly standard economic models have a really hard time explaining.
Right, so during the pandemic, the government sent out stimulus checks. The big puzzle is this: why did two people, both unemployed, with pretty much the same financial situation, spend that money so differently? What was the invisible factor that was driving their decisions? So to solve this, researchers did something clever. They looked at unemployed households, but split them into two groups. The only difference wasn't their current income, it was how much savings they had before the pandemic hit. And that little distinction, well, it turned out to be the key to the whole thing.
Now let's look at the first group, the people who had low savings before they lost their jobs. For every single stimulus dollar they got, they immediately went out and spent 53 cents of it. In economics, this is called the marginal propensity to consume, or MPC. Theirs was 0.53.
But now get this, the group that used to have high savings, their MPC was just 0.29. They only spent 29 cents of every dollar. I mean, that is a massive difference that you just can't explain by looking at their current situation. Both groups were unemployed, both got a check from the government. So what's the missing piece?
Well, the answer isn't in their bank accounts, it's in their brains. This brings us to the science of how our past experiences literally rewire our future financial decisions. It's pretty cool.
The concept behind it all is called reinforcement learning, and honestly, the best way to think about it is like this. If you touch a hot stove, you learn instantly and powerfully to never do that again. Well, a major financial shock, like being unemployed with almost no savings, is basically a financial hot stove. The experience is so negative that your brain learns a powerful new rule: avoid this situation at all costs.
And this chart from the research, man, it shows this perfectly. See, that blue line is the rational spending path you'd expect based on economic theory. But look at the red line. That represents someone who has touched that financial hot stove, like being unemployed with no safety net. Even after their assets recover, their spending or their consumption stays consistently lower. Their experience has literally rewritten their internal financial rulebook to be way more cautious.
Researchers call this a scarring effect. The memory of that hardship creates a lasting behavioral change. It explains why that low asset group spent their stimulus checks so fast. They were desperately trying to get away from that hot stove feeling of having nothing. But at the same time, that experience also scars them into saving way more aggressively in the future once they get back on their feet.
Okay, so let's zoom out and connect all of these dots. From the grocery aisle all the way to the science of learning, we can really start to see a clear picture emerging.
Think about the journey we just went on. We started by seeing how something like inflation is changing our daily habits at the store. We saw how Gen Z is building totally new, resilient financial playbooks for themselves. And then we solved that whole stimulus check puzzle by understanding that past financial shocks leave these scars on us, a lesson our brains learn through reinforcement. The big takeaway here is that our financial behavior is learned from our unique life experiences.
And what that really means is there's no single right way to manage money because we're all working from a different internal rulebook, one that was written by our own past. So the final question isn't just about what's in your bank account today, but what experiences have shaped your own unique financial fingerprint.